topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Well, hello there, and welcome to Learning to Dance in the Rain. I'm Shelby Wagner, your host, and today's episode is a heartfelt tribute to the incredible women whom we call mom. Whether you're a mother, a grandmother, adoptive mother, stepmom, or beloved mother figure, or maybe your mother's not with us anymore, we celebrate you and all mothers. Mother's Day is more than just flowers and cards. It's about honoring love, strength, and sacrifices that our mothers pour into the families every day. And in this special episode, we want to hear stories that you have. If you want to call in, the number is 561-623-9429. And you could type it in and we'll see it and read it however you want to do it. But we would like to hear the best advice that your mother ever gave to you, or a cherished memory that you might have. So grab a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, and let's take time to reflect and remember and celebrate the women who helped shape who we are. And I'm going to welcome Pastor Carl Litchfield from Menden and Borough Churches. Hi there, Carl. How are you today?
I'm up and happy today, Shelby. So
Well,
I should be very interesting, because you can't tell what's going to happen and what I might say.
Right. Well,
just fair warning.
And Mother's Day is coming up next Sunday, and so I thought it would be good to reflect on what the history of Mother's Day. So I'd like to read this before we dive deeper into today's stories. Let's take a moment to explore where Mother's Day comes from. Mother's Day in the United States was largely shaped by Anna Jarvis in the early 1900s. After her beloved mother, Anne Reeves Jarvis, passed away in 1905, Anna wanted to create a special day to honor the sacrifices and dedication of mothers everywhere. In 1908, she organized the first official Mother's Day celebration in a small church in Grafton, West Virginia. Her heartfelt efforts spread quickly, and by 1914, President Woodrow Wilson signed a proclamation making the second Sunday in May a national holiday, a day that we set aside to honor our mothers. But here's the twist. Anna Jarvis eventually became disillusioned with how commercialized the holiday became. She had envisioned a simple, heartfelt tribute, but soon florists, card companies, and retailers turned it into a money-making event. Anna spent her later years actually campaigning against what Mother's Day had become. Of course, the idea of honoring mothers isn't unique to America. The ancient Greeks and Romans held festivals for mother goddesses like Rhea or Sybil, and in the United Kingdom, Mothering Sunday has been celebrated since the 1600s and tied to visiting one's home or mother church. No matter where or how it's celebrated, the heart of Mother's Day remains the same, a time to honor the love, strength, and sacrifices of the mothers who shape our lives. So with that, can start. Carl, can you remember something that your mother, some advice your mom gave you that you never forgot? or
I
a cherished.
I can remember conversation after I'd left home and I was in the Air Force and returned on one of my leaves while I was in the Air Force. And Mom was asking me about my future plans. I had been overseas. I was my final station. Well, my original training stations were Lackland Air Force Base in Texas, and then Lowry Air Force Base, where I got my technical training. And then I was in Iran for 2 years. My last assignment was Cocoa Beach, Florida at Patrick Air Force Base. So Mom was asking, you've been around a little ways. Have you've seen a little bit of the world? Are you interested in living anyplace else, or are you going to come back to Michigan? And I said, oh, Michigan's my home. I'm going to come back. And I think that's what Mom was searching for, had I been kind of cut loose, and would I be further and further away, or remain away, or would I return? And I think that answer really satisfied her, that my plans were to return. So except for my sojourns away in the Air Force and my time away in seminary when I was in Ohio for 4 years, the remainder of my life I've been living here in Michigan. Was fairly close to my parents. When Dad died, she was no longer able to maintain their retirement home, so she sold the house and moved into Clark Home, which is a United Methodist retirement center in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And I was serving close to Grand Rapids then, so at least once a month I got to get up to. I'd have an appointment, somebody in the hospital or something like that, and I'd be sure after the ministry thing was done, then I'd get over to Clark and have lunch or dinner with my mom and spend time with her before I went home. So that was important connection times for me.
Well, I wouldn't be where I am today if my mother hadn't been very interested in me and my sister and brother also to become piano players. When I was about 12, my mother said, if I can afford, to start saving money for a piano, will you learn to play it? And I said, oh my, I would love to do that. Now I was 7 years older than my brother and 9 years older than my sister.
Wow.
And
okay.
So it wasn't long till one day Mom says, come on, we're going to go buy a piano. And of course that meant lessons and so on. And I think it was about 12 or 13 that I started piano lessons. And a side note on that was we got a piano teacher, and I thought he was probably 100 years old.
Oh, no.
But, there was an obituary Mom saved for me like 60 years later that my piano teacher had died. And he wasn't probably in his 30s or 40s when I took lessons from him. But it shows
ancient
you
and over the hill for a girl of 12 years old.
Right. So that started my piano lessons.
Yeah.
Then when I was about 16, Mom says, okay, I'm going to leverage my money, and you're going to teach the younger kids to play the piano.
Oh.
So I started my piano teaching career with my brother and sister.
Wow.
Well, my sister, she became a music teacher as well as I did. She encouraged me later in life to get my music degree. But my brother, he told me about 3 or 4 years ago, he said, that was not what I wanted to do. I didn't want to play the piano. I said, well, no wonder you gave me such a rough time.
Well, they're either with you or against you.
Yeah. So, but my mom was instrumental in starting me on piano, and later they needed a church organist. Well, that's another story. But I became a church organist at 16. So
why was it that your mother was so interested in you taking on the piano. Was your mother musical? Did she play also? Or?
My mother was always humming, no matter what she was doing in the kitchen or the bedroom or whatever. She was humming.
She had music. She had music within her.
Right. And it was, I only remember hymns, actually. Her favorite was In the Garden.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Quite a bit. And she was in choir in our church, in Presbyterian Church in Auburn Hills. She was in the choir for 50 years.
Wow. Wow. Yeah.
And she was sad when she had to give it up. Yeah. She did. Wow. I did not know, but when she bought, after I went away from home, and she bought a different piano, and she took the free lessons with that. But she said she was left-handed, and so she she used that as an excuse for not being able to play it. But I've had several adults start piano lessons with me, and when I look back on them, I think there were about 12 or 15 adults that started, but there was only one that lasted for, I think she lasted for 2 years. Wow. And I wonder if she's still playing, because
really advanced.
I don't know about that, but just how
my mother was left-handed also.
Was she?
And
did we lose you, or are you thinking? Well, I think we can't hear you. Okay. Okay. What do I do? Anyway, another thing I remembered. There we go. I heard that.
There we are. I wanted to mention my mother was left-handed also, and her gift was knitting. And she was self-taught. She watched someone knit, and she took it up herself. And she was trying to do a special project for my father. My father had a vest pattern. He said, I want this, but I want it with sleeves. So Mom was trying to create the sleeves, and she was having trouble with it. And she went, there was a quite elderly lady in the church that Dad was serving at that time. She was expert in knitting and all kinds of those handcrafts. And she went to the lady and asked if she could help her figure out the problem she was having creating these sleeves. Well, she said, well, show me what you're doing. So Mom started knitting, and this older woman was just amazed. And she says, do you know you're knitting backwards? Because she was left-handed. And she said, I don't think I'm going to help you because you knit backwards. So there's my mother's story there. She was left-handed. There's a few of us in our family that are left. My twin brother is left-handed. I'm right-handed, but my twin brother is left-handed. So my oldest brother is left-handed. So there's quite a sprinkling of lefties in my family.
I don't know of any left-handed people in my family.
How did you? Here's a question for you, Shelby. How did you honor your mother on Mother's Day? Was it kind of a special occasion? Did she have special things that you did for her, or was it a day off that she didn't have to do dinner or things like that? That things were done for her instead? What was that a Mother's Day celebration like in your family?
We always got together. Either we went out to eat in a restaurant when we grew up.
So it's a day out of the kitchen for your mom.
Or we have dinner at our house, or my sister would have them. We had Thanksgiving at my house one year, and the men had all gone hunting or something. I guess most of them had gone hunting, but my husband had gone to Europe to be with his mother, who was his sister had said she didn't even know if Mom would still be alive, but I insisted that he go, and his mother did survive for another 3 weeks while he was there, and then passed about a week after he left. So they got to have that one. But anyway, just as we sat, my mother was very picky about dressing. So she wouldn't touch my dressing.
Oh no.
So she would make the dressing. So she had brought it over, and we had put it in the microwave, I think, to keep it warm. And as we got everything ready, so it's all women there at the table. And just as we are getting ready to sit down to eat, the phone rings, and it's my mother's sister in California.
Oh my.
She starts talking to her, and when she's finished, then we all get together and we start, to eat. And we didn't even think about the dressing until 4 hours later, when we got ready to eat leftovers, and someone said, well, "Where's the dressing?"
Oh no.
You were supposed to make the dress. Well, yeah, I put it in the microwave.
For crying out loud. It was still there.
So we had fresh dressing later in the day that we had forgotten.
Was it still good? Was it still good?
Yeah. Oh, my
wow.
mom.
Well, there you have it.
My mom knew she was a good cook, period.
Yeah. Well, my mother had no break at all when I was young. Of course, Dad was the biggest dinner of the whole week was Sunday dinner after church was done. Mom would put it in the oven ahead of time. And after the services were done in the morning, then we would gather together. And Mom didn't get a break on Mother's Day. She was the only woman in the house. I have 5 brothers, Dad, and there's 6 sons, and Mom. And nobody thought to step up and say, "Mom, why don't you take the day off?" And no, I don't think any of us. I'm a fish out of water in the kitchen anyway. That probably would be inedible but the kinds of things that we would do, of course, were the homemade cards, from little scribble, the drawn with crayons and that sort of thing. And Mother always oohed and ahed over them. And my twin brother and I thought that the best thing we could give our mother was a bouquet of dandelions. And she never turned them down. She always thought they were beautiful and wonderful. She always made over them. I'm sure that on Mother's Day, there were dandelions as a centerpiece on the table. I'm sure of it. So homemade cards and dandelions on the table. There was one time I was thinking about dandelions, how we often gave dandelions to our mothers. And I was with a group of women that were planning the mother-daughter banquet at the church, my first church, and when I gotten out of seminary here in Michigan. And they were talking about flowers, and I said, "How about bouquets of dandelions?" And I tell you what, I got voted down flat on that one. Well, that's just weeds. Why are you talking about dandelions on the table? I said, well, my mama liked them.
I'm sure that a lot of children or you're not the only one. Seems like I remember doing, or my kids doing that to me or something. When you mention it, I've forgotten about it. But yeah, they're beautiful, especially, and very plentiful, and sometimes.
Oh yes, yeah. We like dandelions in our yards. We've been told that the dandelions are the first things that feed the bees and the pollinators and the butterflies and like that. And early in the season, that's the first thing that they can come to, because that's the first thing available. So it's good to have dandelions around.
Right. So, very, very good. Very good.
Yeah.
I don't know if interesting, but about 3 years after I started, about when I was 15 or 16, one of my cousins asked me to play for her wedding, the piano. And oh my gosh, I can't do that, and well, I think you play beautifully, and I'd like you to play for my wedding.
Wow.
So, well, I guess I can learn, So we got to the wedding rehearsal, and there was this big thing over by the pulpit, and I thought, what is that over there? And someone said, "Oh, that's the organ." I says, "Oh, really?" And so I think the pastor heard us, and he, "Come on, Shelby," and took me over to the organ and opened it up and turned it on. He says, "Why don't you try to play? Sit down, play it." Oh my goodness, I could. I mean, this was not a pipe organ, but it was a big electronic one.
Sure.
So It was late for some. One of the attendants was late. I don't know if he got lost or what, but
Oh,
so I had maybe half an hour to fiddle around on that organ before he got there. And when he got there and they started the organ, and Joan came up and she says, "Shelby, you're playing the organ tomorrow for my wedding."
oh, for goodness sakes. Oh, that was rehearsal time. That wasn't the wedding itself.
That was
The attendant was like,
and I said, "What?" And she said, the first time I sat down at the organ, and she says, "I like it, so I want you to play the organ for my wedding." And
wow,
so
that's something else.
afterwards, my mother, then a few days later, says, "Well, when I can afford to buy an organ, we'll get you organ lessons." And so that's how I got started with the organ.
I don't know how you could sit down and play an organ, because I know to hold a note longer, you have to keep that key depressed. You can't just hit it and have the sound continue. So you have to find a way, if you're going down through the keys, you have to find a way to get this finger to hold that key down so you can move this finger over one more. I don't know how in the world you could just sit down and figure out how to do that. I certainly don't have that dexterity, and my fingers are short. My hands are small. My fingers are short. I don't think that I know I couldn't play the guitar anyway. My fingers are too short to make the chords.
Never piano lessons at all.
No, never did. My older brothers, the 4 oldest brothers, each of them played an instrument. My dad played the French horn. My oldest brother also learned to play the French horn. And my second oldest brother learned cello and played in an orchestra instead of a marching band. And then my third brother, Gregory, he learned, he wanted to play the saxophone. And then my fourth brother, Joel, just older than I, he learned trombone, slide trombone. And when it came time for us to learn music, the only lessons we had was the plastic flutophone in elementary school, and basically I flunked flutophone. I was not good at all, and I was not musically inclined to to take on an instrument. I could always sing, by listening, and I don't know music, and I'm just imitating what I hear, but. I was more interested in sports, more so than my older brothers. Although my second oldest brother, he was very interested in baseball and in cross country, and my brother, just older than me, he also ran cross country, but they had their musical interests, but Glenn and I did not.
So did you sing in high school or when you were?
No, there was no. I don't know if they did. I don't know if they had choir available when I was going to high school. But I never did. There was no chorus, no glee club or anything like that I can recall. So I never. Well, I was more interested in sports anyway. If they had it, I was 3 seasons in sports. I was football, basketball for a little while, but I wasn't very good, and I gave it up after my freshman year, and then I ran track to keep in shape. So
when did you start singing then? Because you're singing now ever since.
I sang in my home church as a young adult and a newly married. I got to sing in our home church choir, and I sang next to my cousin Edwin. He was our oldest cousin, and he was a tenor, and I just listened to him and imitated him. So I learned to sing tenor that way. And Glenn also got involved, and he entered the choir, and we were singing tenor. And then the choir didn't sing in the summertime, so we would sign up for doing just singing hymns or something like that, solos and specials. And Glenn and I signed up for one particular Sunday. We had a very dynamic musician from Michigan State, who was our pianist and organist at that time. And Glenn and I had chosen "Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing" for our special, and we were going to learn how to sing it as a duet. And this organist, he brought our voices out in maybe in only a half-hour practice. He got us singing boldly and more loudly, and helped us with parts. I think Glenn sang the lead and I sang the tenor. And it was our first time to do anything special. Probably I was about 21 years of age when that happened, when I started singing like that. And but it's been a wonderful asset to have a singing voice to go into in my ministry in churches. To be able to lead singing is a real benefit to the congregation.
Oh yeah, yeah. And as I sit in the front part there on the piano, you're the only one I hear.
Yeah, I'm drowning everybody else out.
Hear this? That's a nice soprano in the back. I told her the other day she needs to sing a solo in church. Oh no, can't do that. But I said, "Oh yes, you can," but I doubt if she will. You know who I'm talking about. Patty.
Well, we drifted far afield from Mothers and Mother's Day. That
We have, so we need to get back to mothers. This didn't happen on Mother's Day, but on her birthday one day, no, on my birthday. It was on my birthday. I gave my mother a birthday card for birthing me.
Oh wow! Now that's thoughtful. Honest to goodness, I think that's admirable.
It was just and they said, "Well, how come you're giving Mom your own on your birthday?" And I said, "Because if she hadn't given birth to me, I wouldn't be here." Wow. So I had picked that up somewhere along the way that was a good way to honor your mother, not on Mother's Day. Exactly. I have this fondest memory of my mother-in-law. My husband's sister and her family were moving to Europe. Her husband had gotten transferred over to Germany, and so she had 4 boys, and so one boy was in camp, and Grandma stayed with the oldest boy in their home in Chicago or Illinois area, and I took the other 2 and had them at my house for a couple of weeks while Marion and Carl went over to find a house. And when Mom came to my house after they came back, she came and stayed with us then for a couple of weeks by herself, and she'd laugh and giggle every once in a while because Danny, who was the oldest boy, had wanted her to take him to a movie. I think he was maybe 11, 12 at the time, and he says, "Oh, but it's like Sound of Music. You'll really like it." And so Mom said, okay, she would take him. And it was the first episode of Star Wars.
Oh.
The first movie of Star Wars. And she kept giggling every once in a while. She'd giggle, yeah, Star Wars.
Grandma got hoodwinked on that one, I'm pretty sure.
But that reminds me also of something, you get these quotes, or I get these quotes on my phone every once in a while. And one of them was I think it's Cora or something. And the question was, well, how come Grandma's house always is a mess now? Or how come Grandma's house smells? And I didn't do that before. How come it's a mess? And I read that, and right away I thought, if Grandma's house is a mess, and it bothers you, why aren't you helping her clean it up?
Oh, yeah.
Or, Grandma's hands hurt, her fingers. She's getting arthritis in her fingers. They hurt.
Yeah.
Her hips hurt. Her knees.
Right.
Her feet hurt. Maybe she just doesn't have the energy. And so one of the elderly grandparents, they're still moms too. And it would be nice for you to go and help her, maybe.
Help her out. Sure. Help her out.
That's another way that you could honor your grandmother or your mother. I mean, even in that age.
I have
But
a question for
my
you.
grandparent, I do cherish my cards from my grandson that
Oh,
he's made by hand, you know.
well, good. I have
That
a
he,
question for you. You were talking about Mother's Day, and that was your mother-in-law. Your father, your husband had gone to Europe to see his mother before she died. I'm interested in why your husband's mother was in Europe, and how is it that she ended up dying there?
yeah, well,
Tell me the background story of your mother-in-law.
all right. Let's see, where do I start? Well, my husband's sister um, was living in Europe. I mentioned that her husband had been transferred over
Transferred to Germany.
had 4 boys, yeah. And so when mom got a certain age, she was convinced, well, whenever that she had a problem, I'd give her my advice. You know, I was raising kids, so I knew something about doctoring. But mom, I would give mom my advice, and then she'd say, well, thank you, Shelby, but I'm going to take Marion's advice because Marion's a nurse. She's a trained nurse. Okay.
Well.
Marion convinced mom to come to Europe.
Oh.
But before, and she came back to America to travel with her across the ocean. But before they left, she called my husband, us, and she wanted Bob to promise he would come to Europe and see her. And of course, Bob, couldn't do that. And I said, yes, he will come.
Nice of you to volunteer him.
when Marion called from Europe and said she didn't know how much longer mom was going to live.
I see.
And I said, well, tell her you're going to be there.
It's
right there.
time to go.
Well, yeah, do that. I said, you're going. And so he was only going to go for a few days, but of course the best ticket price was for 2 weeks. So I said, you go. And so he went. And of course, Marion said, I don't know if she'll still be alive when you get here or not. But she was. And she survived the whole 2 weeks, like I said. And they had a very, very good time, and communicating and talking. She couldn't talk real well, but they understood each other. And it was very nice. And then he flew home after 2 weeks, and then she passed away.
And then she died. We didn't know if she died while he was there and he was present with her when she died, or
no.
It turned out he was home at the time of her death. Huh.
But he was really glad that he had gone, and so that. And
Was
of
she
course,
brought back to the United States for burial?
Yeah, they sent. Yeah, she's buried in Florida with Grandpa.
Okay. We're just curious about that. What kind of a mother-in-law was she? Did you get along with your mother-in-law?
Oh, she was wonderful. She was the most gracious lady, and she and my parents and Grandpa too. They were quite close. And in fact, my mother, when Bob's parents moved to Florida, and somewhere in there, my mom and dad went down and spent a couple different times a month or so with them. And not only that, but one time my mother's mother in Arkansas, they picked her up and took her with them to Florida. And oh boy, did they get along. I was really lucky. I had a wonderful mother, and I had a wonderful mother-in-law.
Yeah.
Very, 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 very lucky in that way. We have a question out here. What if you were not close to your mother? Any advice?
Sorry, I didn't catch that question.
Yeah. What if you were not close to your mother? What's the reason that you weren't close to mother? Was it, I think it depends. I mean, there's not
break here again.
Yeah, there's not so much that you can do, but it probably is up to you to honor her in some way. But that thought occurred to me. What if the mother is not worthy? Well, they still delivered us. They carried us for 9 months, or maybe whatever. So, Carl, do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, I would say, if you're not close, the Bible asks us to honor our father and our mother. If there's some way that even if perhaps there's an emotional distance there might at least be a relationship of respect. My mother-in-law was a very strong-willed person. She was very dominant in the family and that sort of thing. She and I got along fine, and my wife told me that my mother-in-law respected me. But mostly it was because I knew not to step up and take her on. It was very, let's just say, formidable. But
Okay.
do you want the question is, what kind of relationship was it? Was it just just an emotional distance, or maybe there was a disappointment that the closeness that as a child someone wanted but what did not get? Maybe wanted mom to be a little bit different than mom actually was, and so or was there conflict in the family, or was the child harmed and it seemed like mom didn't protect the child somehow, some way? There are a lot of different reasons why the relationship between a mother and a child can be distant. So a lot of it depends on what was the dynamic in the family that caused that difference and caused that disappointment. There's a lot going on there, but I would say at the very least to be able to follow what the scripture says and to honor father and mother and to give respect in all the ways possible, that's a start. That's the beginning of finding the best relationship possible. But I think that respect needs to be that first step.
Yeah, there's a lot of dynamics, family dynamics, and a lot of things that can go wrong.
Right, there are.
And but we survived, right?
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
We
have to. We learn how to dance in the rain. We have to play the cards with which we have received. The cards that we're dealt with. That's what we got to work with, and we can wish with all our might and heart. I wish it was different. I wish mom was this way or that way, and want something better, the ideal mother, and feel like we got shortchanged. But woulda, shoulda, coulda. All those things don't matter. What really matters is the way things really were, the way things really are, and is it possible to make things better? That's and maybe the first person that needs to offer a change is the one who is feeling left out. Reach out and look for that closer relationship. You might be surprised. You might find that the relationship can be repaired. And maybe mother's missing you, and maybe mother's ready for a change. Maybe mother would welcome, or maybe she's too full of pride and she's not going to be the one to pick up the phone and make that first call. So unless an effort is made, you'll never find out if it could be different.
Yeah, that's true. Well, let's see, we got about a little over 6 minutes. Let's take up, did you get that, print off that tributes that there were about 5 of them to mothers?
I did not. Well, I didn't print that one. I don't know why I didn't.
Okay. Well,
I was hoping you'd read them to me.
I don't know how to pronounce this woman's name. Maya Angelou, I guess. She wrote a poem called Mother, A Cradle to Hold Me. And I think It is true, I was created in you. It is also true that you were created for me. I owned your voice. It has shaped and tuned to soothe me. I thought that was,
Wow, that's beautiful. Yeah, I
yeah.
think Maya Angelou was one of the poet laureates of our nation at once upon a
Really?
time, maybe about 10 or 20 years ago.
Oh,
Very
okay.
contemporary, very contemporary. And the few things that I've heard, because I'm not much of a reader for poetry and that sort of thing, the few things I've heard and have been exposed to of her writings, she does a beautiful job. And I think that's another example of
Mhm.
her beautiful poetic touch. Why
Yeah.
don't you read that again? Why
I,
don't you read that again, please? I think I want to hear it again, please.
it is true, I was created in you. It is also true that you were created for me. I owned your voice. It was shaped and tuned to soothe me.
Uh, I
That,
think even in the womb, mother's voice is the one that the baby is going to be closest to, going to be able to recognize. Somehow muffled, perhaps, and coming through the course of the body, but the one that the baby's closest to, and the first one the baby would ever recognize.
mhm. I was really hurt. We had to wait a long time to get a grandchild, and he we have when we're there when he was born, and we were there for 2 weeks.
Uh-huh.
And Robin said, "The best thing you can do for me, Mom, is if you'll do the feeding at 6 o'clock in the morning." I'm
Uh-huh.
not I'm not a morning person, but I got up and I gave the
Yes.
baby a bottle at
A
6 o'clock
grandma would make that sacrifice.
for 2 weeks, and then of course we had to go back to Tennessee. But he grew when he grew a little older. I loved to read, and Robin, she loved me to read to her and David.
Uh-huh.
I read to them every night, and I was looking forward to reading to my grandson. He
Ah.
would not let me.
Oh no. Oh, well,
Wanted-
that's
He wanted
disappointing.
his mom.
He wanted his mother's voice.
And I
Uh-huh.
wondered for a long time he wouldn't let his father read to him either. It was mom.
Well,
Yeah.
well.
Later he did, and they would take turns, and that was cute. But the only time I got to read to him was when I was babysitting him with.
Wow. Uh-huh. When mom was not available, grandma would have to do.
I had a drawer here in my kitchen for him, and by golly, when they came over, he went right to that drawer, and I had some books there, and he'd go through my books and look at them and so on. But
Huh.
unless his mother was there, she was the one
Yeah.
who wants to
Yeah.
read them. So I thought that was kind of cute. Here's a famous one from Abraham Lincoln. He
Oh,
said, all that I am or hope to be, I owe to my angel mother.
my angel mother. Well, that does sound like Abraham Lincoln, that's for sure.
Do we ever
Yeah.
hear anything about his mother? I wonder. I have never read anything about her, but
I have read some, but it's
think
been about 10 years since I've read biographies, and I
uh-huh.
really don't recall what was said about his mother in those biographies.
But I
His
kind of
father
I,
was quite distant and harsh at times, and so I think perhaps his mother was the more you would think naturally, but maybe not naturally always, but in that family dynamic, mother was more consoling and for Abraham and
mhm.
and the others in the family.
Yeah, it was my mother who was so encouraging for me to play, and
Hmm. Hmm.
she loved to hear me play. But my dad did too. He would come over. I lived 2 doors down. My house was 2 doors down, and he would come over to visit sometimes, and he'd want me to play for him. He
Hmm.
played
Hmm.
played. When I went back and got my music degree back, it was 20 years after I'd gotten my my teaching degree, and He said, I don't know why you thought you had to go back and learn Bach. That's not good music, you know.
Oh my.
And I said, Dad, you sit down there. I'm going to play for you, and I'm going to play a Bach piece. And I played that prelude. I played it for once several months ago. I can't remember the name of it even, but I played it, and I got through, and he says, that wasn't Bach. I said, well, look, it's right here. It says it's Bach. Oh my gosh. He said, after that, every time he came over, I want to hear that Bach piece.
he finally heard it and found out it was good.
And so at this funeral, I told the story, and I played it for everybody.
How appropriate. Yeah. I bet your dad appreciated it. I do think at funeral times when someone's passed away that they're present at the funerals. Well, I wonder what they're going to say. Listening in. Oh,
right.
Is that what they thought? Oh, no. I want to tell a story about my mother, and it happened in May. I don't think it was near Mother's Day. I think it was towards the end of May, because my parents' anniversary was late May, if I recall correctly. Something like the 25th of May. But when I was 8 years old, on a Saturday morning, I woke up in terrible abdominal pain. My dad was good at kind of a first responder. He was trained in Red Cross first responders and first aid kind of training. And he and Mom came in. I was hurting so bad it was hard for me. I couldn't get out of bed. And Dad took one look at me and said, I think he's got appendicitis. So they got me up and got me in the car and took me, this is when we were living close to South Haven, took me to the hospital in South Haven. And I was there in the hospital and in the emergency room, and waiting for our doctor to come in to perform the surgery. I can remember being moved out of the emergency room and being in the hallway. Of course, my mother's right by my side at all the time. And I fell asleep waiting for the surgery to happen. And kind of a side note to that, I woke up and I realized I was in the surgical suite and they were tying my arms down. And I thought, oh, they're getting ready to do the surgery. And then I fell asleep again. And my mom told me later on that the nurse came out in the middle of surgery and said, he's thrashing around. We're going to have to tie him down. I was already in surgery. They had already started the surgical procedure. And that's when I woke up and realized they were tying me down, and then I fell back asleep. They must have let me come too close to the surface. But anyway, my mother stayed with me that first night because I was afraid of being alone in the hospital. And so she slept on three folding chairs overnight and stayed in the room with me. And later on, I found out that that was Mom and Dad's anniversary.
Oh.
She spent their anniversary with me sleeping on three folding chairs. Now, when I stop to think about that, that's my mother. You know, she's doing that extra loving thing. Right. That's how I remember her. Mom was really full of love. And that was just one extraordinary time when it was expressed to me in a wonderful way.
Right.
Well, you mother's sacrificial love.
Right. Yep. That's a good example. And we have to close now. I want to thank you for being with us today. And I hope that you enjoyed it, and we'll share it. It's on learningdanceintherain.com, and it's on any podcast search channel. It's on YouTube at Shelby Wagner. Thanks for coming today and be with us, and enjoy, and God bless you.